The sudden crash echoed through the empty office, reverberating off the sterile walls. Terrell Lawson froze, his hand still gripping the edge of his desk. His tired eyes darted to the door, confusion flooding his mind. What was that sound? He glanced at the clock. 10:15 p.m. He was alone in the office, or so he thought. Rising from his chair, he wiped his tired hands on his jeans and walked toward the source of the noise. The hallway was eerily quiet, the only sound the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. As Terrell approached the conference room, his heart skipped a beat. There, sprawled on the cold tile floor, was Natalie Rivers, his boss. Her body was motionless, her head turned at an unnatural angle. Blood pooled beneath her, a stark contrast to her pale skin. His stomach churned. "Natalie?" Terrell's voice barely broke the silence. No response. His pulse raced. Panic surged through him as he rushed to her side. He knelt down, checking her pulse. It was faint, but still there. She was alive for now. Without thinking, he carefully slid one of her arms around his shoulder and gently lifted her. The weight of her body felt like lead, but Terrell didn't hesitate. His mind was focused solely on getting her help. His mother's voice echoed in his head, reminding him that a good man steps up when no one else will. The rain hammered against the windows as Terrell struggled to maneuver her through the hall. His thoughts scattered, but there was one thing he knew for sure. He couldn't let anything happen to her. Despite the complicated relationship they'd had at work, his responsibility in that moment was to save her. He fought against the ache in his back, pushing through the exhaustion that had been creeping up on him all day. The office building was eerily silent, the only sound being the shuffle of his shoes against the floor. He glanced down at Natalie's unconscious form, her face pale, lips slightly parted. His stomach tightened. This wasn't how his night was supposed to go. All he wanted was to finish his report, get home to Maya, and spend time with her before the next chaotic day began. But now, everything had changed. Terrell had been a single father for years. He'd learned to juggle late-night work, school events, and parenting, always putting his daughter first. But tonight, he was walking a line between his professional responsibility and his personal life, and he couldn't let either one slip away. He made it to his car, the tires screeching against the slick streets as he drove to the nearest hospital. The world outside was blurred by the rain, but Terrell's mind was focused on one thing, getting Natalie the help she needed. But in the back of his mind, another thought lingered. What would happen when this was all over? Would this be a moment of gratitude or one of regret? "Hey, I'm really glad you're here. Be honest. Have you eaten today? What did you have? Tell me that, your location and the time. And if you're new, don't leave without subscribing. It feels empty when you come in and leave without saying a word." The hospital was bustling with activity as Terrell rushed through the sliding doors, Natalie still in his arms. Nurses scrambled around him, pulling her from his grasp and onto a stretcher. Terrell stepped back, his breath heavy. The bright lights above seemed to blur, his vision swimming. He had done the right thing, but his heart hammered in his chest. Hours passed before Terrell was allowed to leave the ER. Natalie was stable, but unconscious. Terrell stood by her side for as long as they would let him, until the nurses finally ushered him out with a promise to call if anything changed. Terrell drove back to the apartment, his mind a whirlwind of confusion. His daughter Maya was probably already asleep, but Terrell knew that even if he stayed up all night, he couldn't shake the unease creeping in. He thought of the way Natalie had fallen, so suddenly, so violently. Was this some kind of twisted test, or worse, a setup? He couldn't deny the possibility, but something in him wanted to believe it wasn't. It couldn't be. As the apartment door clicked shut behind him, Terrell felt the weight of the night settle on his shoulders. Maya's small voice called from the bedroom, and Terrell forced a smile as he went to her. She'd already asked him about his day, how his meeting went. He kissed her forehead and tucked her back in, telling her everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. He tried to shake off the gnawing feeling in his stomach as he lay down on the couch. He couldn't afford to let his mind wander too far, but it was already too late. What had just happened, and how would Natalie respond when she woke up? Would she thank him for his quick action, or would he find himself being blamed for something far worse? The next morning, Terrell's phone rang. The number on the screen wasn't one he recognized, but something in him told him not to ignore it. He picked up. "Mr. Lawson?" The voice on the other end of the line was calm but firm. "This is Officer Daniels. We need to speak to you regarding your actions last night with Ms. Rivers. We'll be sending an officer to your residence soon." Terrell's heart stopped. What was this? He had just helped Natalie, so why was the police involved? What do you think? Was Terrell doing the right thing by helping her? Or is something more sinister at play here? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The shrill ring of the phone shattered the silence in Terrell's apartment. His eyes snapped open, heart racing, still heavy from the night before. He reached for the phone on the coffee table without hesitation, the familiar number flashing on the screen. Officer Daniels. The words that came next hit him like a slap to the face. "Mr. Lawson, we need you to come down to the station. There's been a formal complaint filed, and we need to take your statement." Terrell's throat tightened. He sat up, his fingers gripping the phone as he processed the words. A complaint? What the hell had happened? "Can you come down now?" the officer pressed, his tone flat. "I'll be there in an hour," Terrell responded, his voice steady, but his heart was hammering in his chest. The world outside felt like it was spinning faster than usual, but Terrell couldn't slow it down. The sound of Maya's small feet shuffling in the hallway snapped him back to reality. He put the phone down and rushed to the door. "Maya," he called softly, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "You still need to get ready for school. I'm going out for a bit, but I'll be back before you know it." She peeked around the corner, her wide eyes filled with curiosity. "Everything okay, Daddy?" she asked, sensing something was wrong. He managed a smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just some work stuff. You get ready, I'll be back soon." Maya nodded, her young face still clouded with concern, but she trusted him. Terrell walked out the door, the weight of the world on his shoulders. The ride to the station felt like it took forever, his mind racing with questions that he didn't have answers to. Why was Natalie doing this? What kind of game was she playing? And why had she gone this far? The station loomed ahead, a stark contrast to the quiet apartment he'd left behind. Terrell felt a chill run down his spine as he parked and walked toward the entrance. The officer who'd called him earlier was waiting by the door, his arms crossed, the usual warm greeting nowhere in sight. "Mr. Lawson," Officer Daniels said, his eyes scanning Terrell carefully. "We're just going to have a quick chat inside. This won't take long." Terrell nodded, swallowing hard as he followed the officer into the station. The air inside felt heavy, filled with the tension of uncertainty. His heart pounded louder with each step, but he refused to let it show. Not now, not in front of them. Inside the interview room, a cold metal chair sat in front of a table, the only thing separating Terrell from the uncomfortable truth. He took a seat, running a hand through his hair, trying to keep his mind clear. He had to stay calm. He had to stay strong for Maya. The door opened, and two more officers entered, one of them the detective in charge of the case. The woman glanced at Terrell and sat down across from him, her notepad ready, her eyes scanning him like he was a criminal. "You know why you're here, Mr. Lawson?" she asked, her voice sharp and direct. There was no small talk, no pleasantries. "I think so," Terrell replied, keeping his voice steady despite the storm inside. "But I'm still trying to figure out what exactly is going on. I was just trying to help my boss last night. I didn't do anything wrong." The detective's eyes narrowed. "You're telling me you didn't see anything strange about that situation? A grown man lifting his boss out of the office, driving her to the hospital, and then just walking away with nothing but a phone call?" Terrell's jaw tightened. She slipped. I wasn't going to leave her there. The detective leaned forward. "And the police weren't called in until she accused you of assault? Something doesn't add up." The room went silent, the only sound coming from the hum of the lights overhead. Terrell could feel his heart beating faster now, the heat of the moment pressing down on him like a vice. "Mr. Lawson," the detective continued, her voice lowering, "we've seen the footage, we know what happened, but what we don't understand is why you didn't tell us the whole truth." The words hit Terrell like a slap, his mind reeling. What footage? He had no idea what she was talking about. I didn't hurt her," Terrell said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't—" "You're free to go for now," the detective interrupted, her eyes sharp and unforgiving. "But this isn't over. We'll be in touch." Terrell stood up, his legs shaky as he walked out of the room, the weight of the situation hanging over him. The doors of the station seemed to close behind him with a finality that felt suffocating. What was Natalie really after? And why was this all falling apart so quickly? What do you think? Was Terrell just trying to help, or is there more to the story than meets the eye? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you think about Natalie's accusations. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on the next part of this wild story. Trust me, things are about to get even more intense. Terrell's heart raced as he stepped out of the police station. The cold night air hit him like a slap, but it didn't clear the fog clouding his mind. He walked slowly to his car, his footsteps echoing in the empty parking lot. He kept replaying the conversation with Detective Harris over and over again in his mind. The accusation. The footage. What footage? He slammed the car door shut and started the engine, the engine's hum the only sound breaking the silence of the night. His thoughts were tangled and he was struggling to make sense of it all. The one thing that stuck with him, that gnawed at his gut, was the look on the detective's face. It wasn't pity, it wasn't anger, it was suspicion. And that was worse than anything. He had no idea where this was going or what it all meant for his future. But one thing was clear. The more he tried to clear his name, the deeper the hole seemed to get. As he drove through the empty streets of Philadelphia, his mind flashed back to the night before. The moment he'd carried Natalie to his car, the smell of the hospital, the sterile feel of the room as the doctors took over. He had done everything right, or so he thought. But what if he hadn't? What if someone had seen him as a threat? What if Natalie had known something he didn't? The questions kept coming, and the more he asked them, the more terrified he became. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message from Maya. "Daddy, I miss you. When are you coming home? I made a drawing for you." The message hit him like a punch to the stomach. Maya, his daughter. She was waiting for him, counting on him. He couldn't afford to get caught up in whatever this was. He couldn't let this ruin the life he'd built for her. He tapped out a quick reply. "I'll be home soon, baby. I promise. I love you." He needed to get home, to put his mind at ease, but first he had to figure out what the hell was going on with this investigation. He couldn't let it drag on any longer. The phone rang just as Terrell was about to pull into his apartment complex. The caller ID made his stomach drop. Natalie Rivers. He answered the phone with trembling hands, trying to sound calm, but his voice betrayed him. "Hello? Mr. Lawson?" Natalie's voice was cool, distant. "I just wanted to clear a few things up. I'm sorry for the way things went last night. I never meant for it to escalate like this." Terrell gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. This wasn't the apology he was expecting. This was something else, an attempt to cover her tracks. He could hear it in her voice, the underlying manipulation. "I don't understand," Terrell said, his voice low. "You accused me of assault. Now you're calling me?" I don't want things to get out of hand," Natalie continued. "You know how these things work. We both know how the story could go if it gets twisted. I don't want that for either of us." Terrell's head was spinning. "What are you saying?" His voice cracked. "I'm saying—" She paused, and he could almost hear her deliberating. "Maybe we can work this out. We don't have to involve anyone else. You've got your life, and I've got mine. If we just leave things quiet, we can both go back to normal. Think about it." The call ended before he could respond. Terrell sat there in stunned silence, the weight of her words sinking in. What the hell was she playing at? Was this a power move? Was she trying to control the narrative? He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. As Terrell walked into his apartment, his phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from an unknown number. "I know what really happened. Call me." The sound of the message notification cut through the silence like a blade. Terrell's fingers shook as he reached for his phone, his pulse pounding in his ears. The message on the screen only added to the rising tension in his chest. "I know what really happened. Call me." The words seemed to burn into his retinas as his mind raced with possibilities. Who was this? What did they know? And more importantly, how did they know? Terrell's thoughts spiraled, a swirl of confusion and fear threatening to take over. He stood in his living room, staring at the phone in his hand, the world around him suddenly feeling smaller, more confined. Maya was in her room, probably drawing, completely unaware of the storm brewing just outside her door. The last thing Terrell wanted was to bring this chaos into her world, but he knew he couldn't ignore the message. With a deep breath, he hit the call button. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. A voice, familiar yet distant, came through the receiver. "You don't know me, but I know you," the voice said, the tone calm but deliberate. "I've seen what happened last night, and I know exactly what you're dealing with." Terrell's heart skipped a beat. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice tight with suspicion. "The question is, who do you think I am?" the voice replied cryptically. "You've been played, Terrell. Everything you think you know is wrong." The line went dead, leaving only the hum of silence in the room. Terrell stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the call sinking in. He hadn't expected answers, but he also hadn't expected this. Who had just called him? How did they know about Natalie, and what did they mean by "everything you think you know is wrong"? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Terrell's heart raced again. Was it the police? Was it someone else trying to manipulate him? Who could it be now? Terrell cautiously approached the door, his hand hovering over the handle. He didn't know who to trust anymore. His mind was racing with all the scenarios, but none of them felt right. With a deep breath, he opened the door. Standing there was a man he didn't recognize, dressed in a simple black suit, a stoic expression on his face. He held a small, weathered envelope in his hand. "I'm looking for Terrell Lawson," the man said, his voice low but firm. "That's me," Terrell replied, his voice cautious. The man didn't introduce himself. Instead, he handed Terrell the envelope, his eyes never leaving him. "You need to read this," the man said, his tone unreadable. "And be careful. You don't want to get caught up in this any deeper." Terrell took the envelope, feeling the weight of it as the man turned and walked away without another word. He stood in the doorway, watching the stranger disappear into the night, the envelope heavy in his hand. With trembling hands, Terrell opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The writing on it barely visible in the dim light. The words he read next sent a cold shiver down his spine. "You think you know who's behind this? Think again. You're being watched." The paper felt colder in his hands than it should have. Terrell's eyes scanned the message over and over, the words blurring together as his mind tried to make sense of it. "You think you know who's behind this? Think again. You're being watched." His heart skipped a beat. Who was watching him? And why? Was it someone connected to Natalie? Or was it something bigger? A cold sweat formed on the back of his neck as the silence in the apartment seemed to press in on him. The darkness of the evening was suddenly more oppressive, as if the walls were closing in. His hand shook slightly as he set the letter down on the table and turned around, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Maya was in her room, thankfully, still oblivious to the storm swirling around her. He couldn't let this drag her into it. He had to protect her at all costs, but at the same time, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything he had been doing up until this point, trying to stay in control, trying to fix the mess, might have been a mistake. Was he the one being manipulated? Or was he playing right into someone else's hands? He needed answers, and he needed them fast. His thoughts flickered back to the phone call from the night before, the mysterious voice telling him that everything he knew was wrong. He had to figure out who was behind all of this and what exactly they wanted. But for now, all he could do was wait, and that was the hardest part. Terrell paced back and forth across the living room, trying to think of his next move. His mind raced, replaying every conversation, every encounter he'd had in the past few days. Nothing seemed to add up. His thoughts were scattered. The only thing that was clear was that something wasn't right. A loud knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Terrell froze, every muscle in his body tensing. Was it the police, or someone else with more answers, or more lies? Terrell hesitated, his eyes narrowing at the door. This was getting out of hand. Whoever it was, he wasn't prepared to face them. Not yet. Still, the knock came again, louder this time. Terrell took a deep breath and walked toward the door, each step echoing in the empty apartment. He opened it slowly, peering out, his pulse quickening. Standing there was a woman he hadn't seen before, dressed in a dark coat and a pair of sunglasses that seemed out of place for the late hour. "Are you Terrell Lawson?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. Terrell didn't answer right away. Something about the woman's presence made him uneasy, and he couldn't quite put his finger on why. "Yes," he finally said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Who are you?" The woman stepped closer, her eyes scanning him for a moment before she spoke again. "I'm not here to hurt you, Terrell," she said, lowering her sunglasses. But I know you're in over your head. You need to listen to me if you want to get out of this alive." The words hit him like a punch in the stomach. Alive? "I don't understand," Terrell muttered, his mind racing. "What's going on? Who are you? And why should I trust you?" She glanced around the hallway, making sure no one was watching before she leaned in closer. "Because what you're dealing with is bigger than you think. And if you don't take my help, things are going to get a lot worse for you." Before Terrell could ask another question, the woman handed him a small envelope. "This is your last chance," she said, before turning and disappearing into the shadows, leaving Terrell standing there with more questions than answers. Terrell stood frozen in the doorway, the mysterious envelope in his hand. His fingers trembled slightly as he stared at it, the weight of it feeling heavier than it should. He glanced down the hallway, but the woman was already gone, disappearing into the shadows like she had never been there. There was no sign of her. No sound except the faint hum of the city outside. His heart pounded in his chest. He glanced back at the envelope, the words on it written in a hurried, almost frantic hand. "Your life depends on what's inside. Open it now." The urgency in the message hit him like a freight train, pushing aside all rational thoughts. Without thinking, Terrell tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the text typed neatly but with one crucial detail that stopped him cold. "You're being set up. This is just the beginning. They will come for you next." His throat went dry as he reread the words, the reality of the situation settling in. He had no idea who was after him or why, but there was no doubt in his mind that something much bigger was at play. And now he was a part of it. He shoved the letter back into the envelope and tossed it onto the table. He had to think, had to figure out his next move. Terrell's gaze shifted to the window where the last slivers of sunlight were fading, leaving only darkness behind. It was the kind of darkness that made everything feel uncertain, out of control. Terrell's mind was racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The woman's warning echoed in his ears. "They will come for you next." He rubbed his eyes, exhausted from the mental and emotional strain, but something told him he couldn't afford to rest. Whoever was after him, they wouldn't stop. Not until they got what they wanted. Suddenly, the phone rang again. The number on the screen made his stomach drop. It was Natalie. Terrell hesitated, staring at the phone. Every part of him wanted to ignore it, but the growing sense of unease gnawed at him. He had to know what this was about. He answered the call, trying to keep his voice steady. "Hello?" he said, his grip tightening on the phone. "Terrell," Natalie's voice came through the receiver, cold and calculated. "I think it's time we talked." He clenched his jaw, not sure if he was ready for whatever this was going to be. "Talk about what?" he asked, his tone flat. "I've been thinking," she continued, her voice laced with tension. "I don't think we're done yet. There's still a lot that needs to be cleared up. You've got questions and I can give you answers, but only if you're willing to play along." Terrell's chest tightened. "What do you mean, play along?" "I'm not the only one you have to worry about," she said, her tone almost too calm, like she was hiding something. "There's a bigger game being played here, one that you didn't know you were part of, but you're in it now." The words sent a chill down Terrell's spine. Who else was involved? What game was she talking about? The uncertainty hit him like a wave, but he had no choice but to ride it. "I don't want to be a part of this anymore, Natalie," he said, the words escaping before he could stop them. "I just want to fix this." A long pause filled the air, stretching on until Terrell felt like he might suffocate from the silence. Finally, Natalie spoke again, but this time her voice was lower, almost a whisper. "You don't have a choice anymore. But if you want out, you're going to have to play the game. Trust me, Terrell. You don't want to see what happens if you don't." And with that, she hung up. Terrell sat there, staring at the phone in his hand. The weight of the conversation and the cryptic words that still lingered in his mind felt like a suffocating blanket. He had no idea what he was walking into, but he couldn't walk away. Not now. The danger was too real. The question echoed in his mind. Was he already too deep into this to get out? What do you think? What is Natalie really after, and who else is involved in this game? Is Terrell in too deep, or is there a way out for him? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know what you think about Natalie's cryptic warning. And if you're new here, Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part of this suspenseful journey. Trust me, things are only going to get more intense. The door to Terrell's apartment slammed shut behind him, the echo of it bouncing off the walls as he stepped into the dimly lit hallway. His mind was a storm of confusion and frustration. The conversation with Natalie had done nothing but deepen the mystery. What game was she talking about? And why was she so cryptic about everything? His phone buzzed in his pocket, a sharp reminder that his problems were far from over. Terrell pulled it out, eyes narrowing at the screen. Another unknown number. He felt his heart skip a beat. He was done with the games, but the tension in his chest told him that this wasn't over yet. He answered the call, hoping it wasn't Natalie again. Terrell Lawson? The voice on the other end was a man's, calm and steady, but with an edge that made Terrell's skin prickle. Yeah, who's this? Terrell's voice was tight with suspicion. This is Detective Green from the Philadelphia Police Department, the man replied. We need you to come down to the station. We have some new developments in the case involving Ms. Rivers. Terrell's stomach dropped. He hadn't expected this. Everything had felt like a whirlwind, a bad dream he couldn't wake up from. He glanced at the clock. It was already late, and he had no intention of being dragged back into this mess. I've already been to the station, Terrell replied, trying to steady his breath. I gave my statement. This is different, Detective Green insisted. This is about the footage, the one you haven't seen yet. The words hit like a punch to the gut. The footage. What was going on now? What else was there that he didn't know? We'll be waiting for you, Green said before hanging up. Terrell's hand dropped to his side, his mind racing again. The footage. There was something he wasn't being told. He thought he'd uncovered the truth, but it seemed like there was more buried beneath the surface. Terrell stared at the phone in his hand, his heart pounding. What was this new footage, and why hadn't anyone told him about it before? His body froze with the sudden realization this wasn't just about a fall anymore. This was bigger than he had ever imagined. The ride to the station felt longer than it should have. Terrell tried to steady his nerves, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He couldn't shake the feeling that every step he took now was leading him further into a web he couldn't escape. Was he just a pawn in someone's game? Or was there something more he wasn't seeing? He parked his car in front of the station, the flickering streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. Taking a deep breath, Terrell stepped out of the car and made his way toward the entrance. Every step felt like it was dragging him into deeper waters, but he couldn't turn back now. Inside, Detective Green was waiting for him. The man's face was a study of calm professionalism, but his eyes told a different story. There was something darker lurking beneath the surface, something Terrell couldn't quite put his finger on. Mr. Lawson, glad you could make it, Green said, his voice smooth but with an undercurrent of something more. What's this about the footage? Terrell asked, his voice sharp. Why didn't I see it before? Green's eyes flickered for a moment before he spoke again. We've been reviewing the security footage from the night of the incident. There's something important you need to see. He motioned for Terrell to follow him down a narrow hallway to a small, dimly lit room. Inside was a bank of monitors showing various angles of the office building. Green clicked a button and the footage began to play. Terrell watched in silence as the video showed Natalie's fall in real time. The angle was clear and the footage was sharp, but what shocked him wasn't just what happened, it was what happened next. The camera caught Terrell moving quickly toward her, just as he had described. But as he helped her up, something strange happened. The footage wasn't just showing his actions in real time. It showed a brief flash, a shadow moving in the background, another person hidden just out of view. Who is that? Terrell asked, his voice hoarse as he leaned in closer to the screen. Detective Green's expression remained unchanged, but his voice dropped lower. That, Mr. Lawson, is what we need to figure out. Terrell's mind raced, his heart hammering as the realization set in. Was he being watched? Was he being framed for something bigger? Who else was involved in this? Terrell's eyes were locked on the screen, the blurry figure in the background of the footage haunting him. It moved too quickly to be clear, just a dark shadow darting out of sight. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with the tension of 100 unanswered questions. He could feel sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Who was that? Why hadn't anyone mentioned this before? He turned to Detective Green, whose face remained impassive. "Who's the person in the background?" Terrell asked, his voice tight, barely above a whisper. Green didn't immediately respond. He just stared at the screen, his eyes flickering from the footage to Terrell's face. "We're working on that," Green said after a long pause, his voice slow, deliberate. "But you need to understand, Terrell, you're not just a witness here, you're a key part of this case." Terrell's stomach dropped. He had felt the weight of suspicion ever since the police had shown up at his door. But this was different. He was being dragged deeper into something he hadn't asked for. His hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, he couldn't find his voice. "What do you mean, key part?" he finally managed to ask. "Let's just say that there's more going on here than a simple office accident," Green continued, his voice low. "Your involvement is complicated." The detective's words hung in the air like a bomb, waiting to go off. Terrell could feel the walls closing in. Everything had started with a simple act of kindness, helping Natalie. But now he was in the middle of something much bigger. He could feel it in his bones. "I didn't do anything wrong," Terrell said, his voice rising. "I helped her. I tried to save her. You saw the footage. You saw what happened. Why am I being dragged into this?" Green stepped closer, his eyes steady but filled with something else, something unreadable. "It's not about what you did, Terrell. It's about who's pulling the strings." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And we think you're in the middle of a much larger scheme." Terrell felt a cold shiver run down his spine. "A scheme? What do you mean?" He was desperate for answers, but it seemed like every question he asked only led to more. Green hesitated, then spoke in a low, almost conspiratorial tone. "There are people involved in this who want to keep things quiet, people who won't stop until they get what they want, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure no one stands in their way." Terrell's breath caught in his throat as Green's words hit home. He wasn't just in danger. He was being dragged into something dark, something dangerous. His mind raced as he tried to process what he was hearing. Could it be true? Was someone really behind all of this? Terrell's thoughts were swirling, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't understand any of this. A part of him still wanted to believe that it was just a misunderstanding, that he was caught in a situation he didn't fully understand. But something in Green's eyes told him that wasn't the case. He looked at the detective, who was waiting for him to say something, anything, but Terrell was silent. His mind was still processing everything Green had just told him. Green seemed to sense his hesitation. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said, "but we need you to trust us, Terrell. If you're in this deep, we can help, but only if you're honest with us." Terrell's mind was racing, every fiber of his being screaming for him to walk out of that room, to run and never look back. But he couldn't, not when his daughter's safety was at stake. "I don't know who I can trust anymore," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't sign up for any of this." Green gave him a hard look. "I know you didn't, but the reality is you're already in this. And the only way out is to help us get to the bottom of it." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Terrell stood there, trapped between the truth and the unknown, the weight of the world on his shoulders. Just as Terrell was about to respond, his phone buzzed on the table. A message. He reached for it without thinking, his fingers trembling. The screen lit up with a name that made his blood run cold. "I know what you're doing. Stop before it's too late." The message stared back at Terrell from the screen, the words heavy with implication. "I know what you're doing. Stop before it's too late." His hand hovered over the phone, his pulse quickening. Who could this be? A part of him wanted to ignore it, to throw the phone away and forget the entire mess, but he couldn't. He wasn't a man who ran from problems, especially not when Maya's future was on the line. He had already gone too far to turn back. "Who the hell is this?" he muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible. He knew he had to reply, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized that every response he made could dig him deeper into this tangled web. He glanced at Detective Green, who was standing across from him, his face unreadable. The tension in the room was thick, every second stretching out longer than the last. The detective had watched him for a long moment, waiting for him to speak, but Terrell stayed silent. He didn't want to get caught up in anything else, not yet. "Do you want to know what this is about?" Green finally asked, his voice low. "I know you're scared, but you're not in this alone, Terrell. We're here to help you. But you need to trust us." Terrell clenched his jaw. He was done talking in circles. He couldn't afford to waste time on cryptic warnings or vague reassurances. His life was on the line. Everything was unraveling too quickly. "I've seen enough," Terrell said, cutting through the detective's words. "If you want my trust, you need to start giving me some answers. I don't have time to wait around anymore." Green's eyes hardened slightly, but he nodded. "All right, I get it, you're right." He turned to the computer in front of him and clicked a few keys. The screen flickered for a moment before a new image appeared, a security camera feed. Terrell leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he saw the footage from a different angle. This time, the shadowy figure in the background was clearer, their face partially illuminated in a flicker of light. The figure was tall, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. "Who is that?" Terrell asked, his voice tight with tension. Green didn't hesitate. "That person? That's someone we've been tracking for weeks now. They're part of a larger operation, one that has ties to the very people you're dealing with." Terrell's breath hitched. He had been hoping for some clarity, some understanding, but this only made things worse. How far did this go, and why was he so deeply tangled in it? Before Terrell could process what he had just heard, his phone buzzed again. The screen lit up, displaying a new message. His heart sank as he read the words. "Don't trust the police. They're just as much a part of this as anyone else." The message sent a cold shiver down Terrell's spine. He stared at the phone, unable to tear his eyes away from the screen. But this wasn't just some random threat. Someone knew too much, and that meant he was no longer in control. "Who sent this?" Terrell whispered, his voice shaking slightly. Green watched him closely, his expression hardening. "I don't know," he said, "but we're going to find out." Terrell's mind raced as the realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had been careful, trying to keep his distance from this mess, but now he was in the thick of it. There was no running now. Whoever was behind this had eyes everywhere. "I can't keep going like this," Terrell muttered, pacing the room. "I'm done with the games." "Don't do anything reckless," Green warned, his voice taking on a sharp edge. "You're already deeper in this than you think. If you move too fast, you could make things worse for yourself. Trust me on that." Terrell stopped in his tracks, his hands balling into fists. "I don't have a choice anymore. Every damn move I make is being watched. I don't know who to trust anymore, but I'm not just going to sit back and wait for the world to burn down around me." Green stepped forward, his voice dropping to a more urgent tone. "You need to trust me. You need to stay calm, stay focused. If you go off the rails now, everything you fought for is going to be gone in an instant." Terrell felt the weight of those words sink in. Green was right. He couldn't afford to lose control, not with everything at stake. But as he looked back down at his phone, another message pinged in. His fingers hovered over the screen, hesitating. "You're being set up, Terrell. Don't make the mistake of trusting anyone in that room." The room felt smaller now. Terrell's head was spinning as he tried to make sense of the messages, the secrets, and the tangled web around him. It felt like everyone in his life was turning on him. But who was behind it all? The phone in Terrell's hand felt like a ticking time bomb. Every new message added weight to his already heavy heart, and the words on the screen blurred together as his mind scrambled to make sense of it all. "You're being set up. Don't trust anyone." The words echoed in his head, each one more chilling than the last. He slammed the phone down onto the table, running his hands through his hair in frustration. He needed answers, real answers. But nothing made sense anymore. Was he just a pawn in some twisted game, or was he caught in something deeper, something more dangerous than he could comprehend? He glanced at Detective Green, who was sitting across from him, waiting for him to process everything. The tension in the room was thick, the silence unbearable. Green had been calm throughout their entire exchange, but even his patience seemed to be wearing thin. Terrell could see the uncertainty in his eyes, the way his fingers drummed nervously on the table. "Green," Terrell said, his voice shaky but firm. "You said I wasn't alone in this. You said you were here to help me. So why does it feel like everyone around me is a part of this mess?" Green hesitated, his gaze flickering briefly to the door before returning to Terrell. "I know this isn't easy, Terrell," he said quietly, "but there are things happening that we can't control. There are forces at play here, people you don't even know. If you try to go after them on your own, you're walking into something you can't get out of." Terrell leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his face drawn with exhaustion and frustration. "I don't care what's going on. I'm not sitting here waiting for whatever's coming next. If I don't take action, I'll lose everything. My job, my daughter, everything I've worked for." Green's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. "You need to trust us, Terrell. If you go after this alone, you're going to make things worse. You've already made a mistake by going public with this. The people behind this are powerful. They've been watching you for a long time, and they won't hesitate to take you down if you push too hard." Terrell sat back in his chair, his mind racing. He had no choice. He needed to do something, but Green was right. If he moved too quickly, he might make things worse, but every second felt like an eternity, every moment weighed down by the looming sense that something was about to break. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. Terrell's breath caught as the message on the screen appeared. "We're watching. Don't try to escape. It's too late." The room felt like it was closing in on him as Terrell read the message. The cold, calculating words on the screen made his blood run cold. This wasn't just some office drama anymore. Someone was playing a game with his life, and he had no idea how deep it went. He looked at Green, his expression hardening. "What the hell is going on? Who is this? Who's behind all of this?" Green exhaled slowly, clearly struggling with the words. "We're dealing with a powerful group, Terrell. I can't tell you everything. But I can tell you this. This is bigger than just you and Natalie. These people have connections, resources. They know everything about you. They're tracking your every move." The weight of those words hit Terrell harder than anything else. They were watching him. Someone out there knew every detail of his life. His every move was being tracked, every phone call monitored, every text message read. He was no longer just a father trying to do right by his daughter. He was a player in a game far beyond his control. "I need to know who they are," Terrell said, his voice barely a whisper. "I can't keep living like this, not knowing who's out to get me." Green looked at him for a long moment before speaking again. "We'll get there. But you need to understand, Terrell, the moment you start asking questions, the moment you start digging into this, there's no going back. You're already in too deep." Before Terrell could respond, the door to the room opened with a soft click. A man in a dark suit walked in, his presence immediately commanding attention. His face was stern, his eyes sharp, and Terrell felt a chill run down his spine as the man's gaze landed on him. "We need to talk," the man said, his voice low, steady, and filled with authority. The man in the dark suit stepped into the room like he owned it, his eyes scanning Terrell with a cold, calculating gaze. His presence was imposing, his silence loud, and Terrell instinctively straightened up, his heartbeat echoing in his chest. For a moment, the entire world outside the room seemed to disappear. There was only him and this stranger. The man didn't bother with pleasantries. He didn't introduce himself or explain his purpose. Instead, he crossed the room and took a seat across from Terrell, folding his hands on the table with a deliberate calmness. "You've been making a lot of noise, Terrell," the man said, his voice deep and measured, "asking the wrong questions, poking around in things that are better left alone." Terrell clenched his jaw, staring back at him, not willing to show any sign of weakness. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady despite the rapid thoughts firing in his mind. "And what do you want with me?" The man's lips twitched into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You don't need to know who I am. What matters is that you've crossed a line, and now we need to clean up the mess you've made." Terrell's mind raced. Was this some sort of threat? Was this the person behind the messages, behind the surveillance, behind everything that had gone wrong in his life recently? He tried to keep his composure, but his fists clenched under the table, his body tense, ready for whatever came next. "What mess?" Terrell shot back, refusing to be intimidated. "I've done nothing wrong. All I've done is help Natalie. I'm trying to fix my life to keep things normal for my daughter. If someone has a problem with that, then they can come after me directly." The man leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, piercing Terrell with a look that made him feel like prey. "You don't understand. This isn't about what's right or wrong in your eyes. This is about power, control. You think you're the one in control of this situation, but you're not. You never were. Terrell felt a cold shiver crawl up his spine. This man was dangerous. His calm demeanor only made the threat more real. "What do you want from me?" Terrell asked again, his voice firmer now, as he tried to hold his ground. "Your cooperation," the man said simply. "You're in the middle of something much bigger than you realize, Terrell. And whether you like it or not, you're already too deep. It's either you cooperate or things get a lot worse for you and your daughter." The words hung in the air like a threat, and Terrell's stomach twisted with dread. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about Maya. The realization struck him with the force of a freight train. Whoever these people were, they were willing to go to any lengths to ensure he stayed in line. Terrell's mind raced, but he kept his face as calm as possible, even though inside his thoughts were spinning wildly. Maya, his daughter. The thought of anyone threatening her made his blood boil. But what could he do? He didn't have the power to fight whatever this was. Not yet. His gaze locked with the man's, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to fade. "I'm not going to sit here and let you use me," Terrell said, his voice low, but full of conviction. "If you think for 1 second that I'll be some pawn in your game, you're wrong." The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "You don't have a choice, Terrell. You think you can walk away from this? You've already made your choice when you tried to help Natalie. Now, you need to finish what you started." Terrell's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This wasn't some game anymore. His every move was being watched. His every step was being controlled. He felt trapped and cornered like there was no escape. The stakes were higher than he'd ever imagined. The man stood up, his suit shifting with the motion. "You'll be contacted again. Don't make any more mistakes, Terrell. The next time we meet, it won't be under these circumstances. Understand?" Terrell didn't say anything. He couldn't. All he could do was nod, though every part of him screamed to refuse, to fight back. But something told him that if he didn't play along, the consequences would be too dire. He didn't know what to do, but he knew that his daughter's future depended on him figuring it out. The man turned and walked to the door, pausing just before he exited. "Remember, Terrell, you're in this now, and there's no way out." The door clicked shut behind him, and Terrell was left in the silent room, the weight of the man's words hanging over him. He had no idea who was behind this, or why it had to be him, but one thing was certain: he was caught in something much bigger than himself. The silence in the room was deafening. Terrell stood frozen, the weight of the man's words still hanging in the air, pressing down on him like a 1,000-pound weight. The door clicked shut behind the stranger, and Terrell's heart pounded in his chest, the reality of his situation sinking in. His hand shook as he rubbed his face, trying to clear the fog in his mind. He couldn't think straight. He was being pulled into a game, a web of lies and manipulation he had never asked for. And what scared him most was that he had no idea who was playing him, who was pulling the strings. He only knew one thing: he had no choice but to keep moving forward. He had to protect Maya. He had to protect the life they had built, the only thing that mattered to him. The thought of anyone threatening her, using her as leverage against him, made his blood run cold. But what was he supposed to do? Who could he trust? The pounding in his head grew worse, the weight of the decisions pressing in on him. He couldn't keep going in circles. He had to act. But how? Terrell walked to the window, his hands still trembling as he looked out over the city. The lights of Philadelphia flickered in the distance, a city that felt both comforting and suffocating all at once. The noise from the streets below drifted up to his apartment, but it felt miles away. Nothing in his life had ever felt so distant. The phone buzzed again on the table, pulling him out of his thoughts. He stared at it for a long moment before reaching for it, his heart skipping a beat when he saw the caller ID. It was from an unknown number. His instincts told him to ignore it, but the way the call had been timed, just after his meeting with the man in the suit, made his gut churn. He answered it without thinking. "Terrell." The voice on the other end was familiar. It was Detective Green. His voice was low, urgent, and it sent a jolt of electricity through Terrell. "You need to listen carefully. Things are moving faster than we expected." Terrell's pulse quickened. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "We've been following up on the leads you've been feeding us, but there's something you need to understand. You're not just a bystander in this anymore. They've been planning for a long time, and now they're setting their sights on you." Terrell's stomach dropped. He wasn't sure if he was ready to hear this. "Who are these people, Green? What do they want from me?" "They want you to stay quiet. They want you to disappear, and if you don't, they'll take everything from you. They're not just after you, they'll go after everyone you care about." The words hit Terrell like a punch to the gut. Everyone you care about. His thoughts immediately turned to Maya. His daughter was the most important thing in the world to him, and the thought of her being dragged into this nightmare was unbearable. But what could he do? If he tried to run, if he tried to fight back, would it make things worse? Green's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "Listen, Terrell, we have a plan. We can get you out of this, but you need to trust us. You need to follow our lead. I know it's hard, but it's the only way." Terrell stood still, his thoughts racing. He wasn't sure who to trust anymore. Was Green on his side? Was there anyone who had his back in all of this? "What do you need from me?" Terrell finally asked, his voice steady despite the whirlwind in his mind. "I'll be in touch," Green said, his tone flat. "But you need to lay low. Don't make any moves without us. We'll guide you through this. The clock's ticking, Terrell." The line went dead, and Terrell stood there, holding the phone to his ear, the words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. He had been given an ultimatum: follow their lead or lose everything. But what if he didn't trust them? What if they were playing him just like everyone else? The choice weighed on him. But there was one thing he couldn't ignore. He couldn't risk losing Maya. Terrell dropped the phone onto the table, his eyes scanning the room as the tension in his chest rose. Was it too late to make a move of his own? Could he still find a way to protect his daughter without getting caught in the game? Terrell took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The clock was ticking. The pressure was mounting, and everything in his life was about to change. But before he could process his next move, the doorbell rang. He walked cautiously toward the door, his mind still racing, not knowing what to expect. He didn't want to open it, didn't want to face whoever was standing on the other side. But he had no choice. When he opened the door, a man stood there, his face obscured by the darkness outside. But his voice, Terrell knew that voice. It was the man from the suit. He stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk, Terrell. It's not over yet." Terrell stood frozen in the doorway, the weight of the man's words heavy in the air. What did he want now? And what more was he dragging Terrell into? Terrell's heart pounded in his chest as the man in the dark suit stepped into his apartment, his presence filling the small space like a shadow. Terrell stood frozen in the doorway, torn between fear and anger. He couldn't back down now, not after everything he'd been through. The stakes were too high. The man didn't say a word. He simply walked past Terrell, his movements slow and deliberate, as if he knew Terrell would follow. The silence between them was thick, charged with the tension of all the unsaid words. Terrell's mind raced. Was this it? Was this the moment everything finally fell apart? The man finally spoke, his voice steady but his eyes intense. "I'm not here to play games with you, Terrell. You've been running for too long. It's time to face the truth." Terrell didn't respond, his mouth dry. His mind flashed to his daughter Maya, and the thought of anything happening to her made his blood run cold. He had to protect her. He had to finish this, no matter what it cost him. "I know you've been in the dark," the man continued, "but the truth is, there's no way out of this unless you make a choice. We've been monitoring you, Terrell, watching your every move. The moment you helped Natalie, you signed up for this." Terrell clenched his fists at his sides, trying to keep his emotions in check. "I didn't sign up for any of this," he said through gritted teeth. "You did. Whether you realized it or not," the man said calmly. "Now, you need to decide if you're going to continue playing the hero or if you're going to take the only way out." Terrell swallowed hard, his mind whirling with the options. He could keep running, keep fighting, but at what cost? His daughter? His sanity? Was there a way to win in all of this, or was he just being manipulated? The man stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. "You have one last chance, Terrell. If you walk away now, it's over. But if you want to fight back, if you want to take control of your life again, I'm offering you a way out, All you have to do is take it. Terrell's mind raced. His thoughts flickered back to Maya, to everything he'd fought for. He couldn't let this consume him. He couldn't let them win. "What's the catch?" he asked, his voice rough. The man smiled, a cold, calculated smile. "There's always a catch. But I'm willing to offer you the truth, Terrell, the real story behind all of this. All you have to do is follow me. Come with me, and we'll end this." The room seemed to close in around him as Terrell weighed the decision. Was he ready to face whatever truth this man was offering? Was he ready to stop running? Before Terrell could make up his mind, a sudden realization hit him. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about his daughter, his responsibility as a father. If he was going to protect her, he had to take action, take control of his life again. No more waiting, no more fear. He looked at the man with new resolve. "All right," Terrell said, his voice firm. "I'll go. But you'd better be ready for whatever comes next." The man nodded, his smile widening, as if this was exactly what he had been waiting for. As Terrell followed the man out the door, he felt the weight of his decision settle on him. The unknown lay ahead, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was finally in control of his fate. But as the door closed behind him, he couldn't shake the feeling that something even bigger was waiting just around the corner. What had he just stepped into? And would he make it out alive? What do you think? Was Terrell right to take the risk, or is he walking into an even darker trap? What do you think the truth is? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know what you think. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. This story is coming to an end, but the twists and turns are far from over. You won't want to miss what happens next. In the final moments of the story, Terrell made his choice. He decided to face the truth head-on, not knowing what it would mean for his future. The suspense and tension that had gripped him through every chapter came to a head, leaving the audience with a sense of both resolution and anticipation. He had taken control of his fate, but the question remained, was it the right choice? This was the culmination of Terrell's journey, the moment where he stopped running from the shadows and stepped into the light, ready to fight for his family, for his life. But even as the story closed, it left a lingering sense of uncertainty, a promise that the fight wasn't over and that Terrell's future was still unwritten. The journey of a father, a man, and a survivor. A story that was full of suspense, twists, and the kind of emotional depth that could keep audiences hooked, thinking and discussing long after the screen went dark. Thank you for going on this journey with Terrell. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment your thoughts below. You never know what twist the next story will bring.